In Florida, the law lets a stranger earn up to 18% a year by paying someone else's property tax bill. 18% written into the statute backed by real estate. In 67 counties you can bid on from your couch. Your savings account pays you a rounding error. This pays a number that sounds made up, and the reason you have never heard a bank mention it is not an accident. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The banks already know about this asset. They just have no reason on earth to tell you, because the moment your money leaves their vault and starts earning 18% on its own, they stop earning it for you. The asset is called a tax lien certificate, and it sounds boring on purpose. Let me explain the whole thing in plain language, because once you see the shape of it, you cannot unsee it. When a property owner does not pay their property taxes, the county still needs that money to run schools and fire trucks, so the county does something clever. It sells the debt. It bundles up the unpaid tax bill into a certificate and auctions it to investors. You show up, you pay the county the overdue taxes, and in return, the county hands you a legal claim against that property. Now, the owner does not owe the county. They owe you plus interest at a rate the state itself sets. Let me be honest about why this matters. The cost of not knowing this is that your cash sits in a savings account, earning almost nothing while inflation eats it from the inside. You are told that safe means slow, and slow means a savings rate that loses to the price of groceries every year. Meanwhile, there is an asset secured by land with an interest rate written into law that most people will go their whole lives never hearing about. That gap between what you are offered and what actually exists is where the quiet money lives. Think about that for a second. The safest looking place you park your money is often the place that quietly costs you the most. So stay to the end, because the last one ties the rest together, and it explains why the wealthy treat safety and boredom as features, not flaws. We are going to walk through the real numbers, the real risk, and the one thing the certificate is really teaching you underneath all the mechanics. Start with the interest rate, because it is the part that sounds too good. In Florida, the maximum statutory rate on a tax lien certificate is 18% a year. In Arizona, it is 16%. These are not marketing numbers invented by a guru. They are set by the state legislature and printed in the law. The counties run auctions, often entirely online, where investors compete for these certificates. The catch, and there is always a catch, is how the competition works. In a bid-down auction, the rate starts at that legal maximum and investors undercut each other, accepting a lower rate to win the certificate. So in a crowded, popular county, that shiny 18% can get bid down close to nothing. That is the first real lesson. The headline rate is the ceiling, not the promise. In the busy counties, the big money shows up and drives the rate into the ground, because even 2 or 3% secured by real estate looks good to an institution sitting on billions. In the quieter counties, the smaller certificates, the ones too tiny for a bank to bother with, the rate stays high because nobody is fighting over them. The individual investor's real edge is not competing with the giants. It is going where the giants cannot be bothered to go. Now here's a detail that shows how the system protects the investor. In Florida, if the property owner pays their taxes back within the first 3 months, the law guarantees you a minimum return of 5%, no matter how low you bid. Think about the shape of that. Even in a worst case where you accepted a low rate and the owner redeemed almost immediately, the state steps in and floors your return at 5%. There are not many places in the ordinary world where the government writes a minimum return into the deal on your behalf. So how do you actually get paid? 2 ways, and this is where it gets interesting. The first way, the boring and by far the most common way, is that the property owner eventually pays their tax bill. When they do, they pay the county pays you, and you get your original money back plus all the interest that accrued while you held the certificate. Most certificates end exactly like this. The owner did not want to lose their home over a tax bill, so they scramble and pay, and you collect your interest. It's not one thing that makes this work. It is a very human incentive. People fight hard to keep their houses. The second way is rarer and far more dramatic, and it is the part the late-night gurus love to scream about. If the owner never pays after a set redemption period, 1 to 3 years depending on the state, the certificate holder can begin the process to foreclose and potentially take the property itself. Now, this is rare, let me be honest, because this is exactly where people get sold a fantasy. You are not going to routinely scoop up beachfront homes for the price of a tax bill. Almost everyone redeems. But it does happen, and when it does, the returns are the kind that sound illegal. The certificate is really an interest-bearing instrument with a small lottery ticket attached. Let me put a face on who quietly does this at scale, because you are not the first to discover it. Large institutions and specialized funds buy these certificates by the thousands. Banks and hedge funds have run entire desks dedicated to municipal tax liens precisely because the returns are strong and the collateral is land that cannot run away. Educators like Ted Thomas have spent decades teaching ordinary people the same mechanics the institutions use, and the institutions would honestly prefer he stayed quiet because every certificate a regular person buys is one the fund does not get. This is not a hidden loophole, it is a public auction. It is just a public auction that nobody advertises to you, because there is no commission in telling you to skip the middleman. Now, the honest part, the risk because a rate that high always comes with strings, and anyone who hides them is lying to you. First, the property behind the lien might be worthless. A vacant lot in a flood zone, a parcel with an environmental problem, a building the owner walked away from on purpose. If the owner never redeems and you foreclose, you might end up owning a liability, not an asset. Second, there are other liens. Some debts, like certain federal claims, can sit ahead of yours or complicate the payout. Third, your money is not liquid. Once you buy a certificate, you cannot pull that cash back out on a Tuesday because you changed your mind. You wait for the redemption on the property owner's timeline, not yours. And fourth, the good high-rate certificates in quiet counties take real homework to find. This is not a button you press, it is a skill you build. Here is the exception that proves you must do the work. A first-time buyer once bid aggressively on a certificate simply because the address sounded nice, without ever checking what stood on the land. It turned out to be an unbuildable strip beside a highway with a cleanup order attached. He won the auction and won a problem. The certificate is only as good as the dirt behind it. Do the homework, and the rate is real. Skip the homework, and the rate is bait. Here's what almost nobody tells you about the people who use this well. They do not chase the foreclosure jackpot at all. They treat the certificate as exactly what it usually is, a boring, secured, double-digit interest instrument, and they buy a lot of them across many counties so that no single dude can hurt them. They take the interest each time an owner redeems, and they roll it straight into the next batch of certificates. The magic is not one giant score, it is a machine that pays a strong rate, secured by land, over and over, with the winnings feeding the next round. And that is the final twist, the thing this whole asset is really teaching you. The banks did not hide tax liens because they are illegal or secret. They stayed quiet because the certificate proves something they never want you to fully believe. Your money can work directly at a strong rate, without them standing in the middle taking their cut. Every dollar you deploy yourself is a dollar the bank cannot lend out at a spread and keep the difference. The asset banks hope you never find is not really the tax lien certificate at all. It is the simple idea underneath it that you can be the lender instead of the borrower. Once you have been the one earning the interest instead of paying it, the whole game looks different. Here is the one line to keep. The bank's business is standing between your money and its interest. This asset removes them from the middle. Picture two savers who each set aside the same $10,000. The first left it in a savings account because it felt safe and simple, and watched it earn a few coins a year while prices climbed past it. The second spent a few weekends learning one county's tax auction, bought a handful of small certificates nobody else wanted, collected her interest when the owners redeemed, and rolled it forward again. Years later, the first saver still has almost exactly what he started with, a little poorer in real terms. The second built a quiet, secured income stream out of the exact same starting money in the exact same economy, using an asset that was public the whole time. The only difference was that one of them went looking and one of them believed safe had to mean slow. If you know someone who thinks safe money has to earn nothing, send them this. Then like the video and subscribe because the next boring asset is even better.